Imagine an ancient battlefield. Two massive armies are staring each other down. One side holds a guaranteed mathematical advantage, yet their leadership is paralyzed by a fear that their own numbers cannot soothe. The Kaurava army is an overwhelming force. They brought 11 military divisions, known as Akshauhinis, to the fight. Opposing them are the Pandavas, who command a mere 7 of these divisions. By every metric of ancient warfare, the Kauravas have already won. But despite this 11-7 certainty of victory, the Kaurava High Command is experiencing a severe psychological collapse right on the front lines. Physical weapons will not decide this war. The first cracks have already appeared in the mind, long before the first arrow is ever fired. Miles away from the mud and the chariots, King Dhirtarashtra sits safely in his palace. Because he is blind, he relies entirely on the psychic vision of his advisor, Sanjaya, to report the movements of the armies. His opening question reveals a deep internal conflict. He asks what the armies are doing on Dharmakshetra, the field of righteousness. In the Vedic tradition, Kurukshetra is more than a field. It's a sacrificial arena, where the land itself is believed to nourish virtuous conduct. The king knows his claim to the throne is a lie. He illegally usurped the kingdom from his nephews, the Pandavas, and he knows that a field dedicated to righteousness is the last place his son should be. He is terrified that the sanctity of this ground will force a moral awakening in his sons. If the land influences them to negotiate a peaceful truce, his stolen power vanishes. He realizes that for him to keep the throne, his conscience must be suppressed by the noise of war. This deep-seated guilt and selfish attachment to his sons make the king prefer a devastating war over a just peace. He is willing to sacrifice everything to maintain a position he never earned. On the battlefield, this moral rot manifests in the king's son, Prince Duryodhana. Though the aggressive instigator, his behavior is anything but confident. Instead of rallying his vast forces, Duryodhana's first instinct is to point out the dangerous attack formations of the enemy. He immediately directs his commander's attention to the most feared warriors on the opposing side, revealing how much they haunt his thoughts. Then he commits a tactical blunder in diplomacy. Speaking to his commanding general, Drona, Duryodhana addresses him as a brahmana, a priest, rather than a warrior. He is subtly questioning his general's toughness at the exact moment he needs Drona's total commitment. Attempting to recover, the prince starts listing his own generals. He names a few, but abruptly trails off, dismissing the rest of his command, calling them many other heroes who have come to die for him. Duryodhana's erratic speech attempts to project a command he clearly no longer feels. Instead, it broadcasts deep-seated insecurities and a lack of trust to his entire military leadership. This paranoid behavior actively destroys the morale of his own troops. The Kaurava army is a fragile coalition, and Duryodhana's visible panic creates the immediate risk of a total collapse in discipline. Seeing the ranks fracture, Senior General Bhishma steps in. He blows his massive conch shell to snap the prince out of his panicked state. But this single action triggers a chaotic, uncoordinated chain reaction. Drums, tabors, and cow horns blare simultaneously across the Kaurava army. Driven by anxiety, they effectively fire the first bullet of the war out of sheer nerves. Across the battlefield, the response is entirely different. Lord Krishna and the warrior Arjuna blow their divine conches in a unified, steady, and deliberate manner. The stark contrast in these opening sounds reveals the truth of the battlefield. One army is driven by panic, while the other is grounded in purpose. Before the soldiers even clash, the psychological war has already been decisively lost by the Kauravas. In the Vedic tradition, King Dhirtarashtra serves as a representation of the deluded ego that exists within every human being. He is the internal force that twists reality to fit narrow, personal biases. He represents the part of us that chooses destructive conflict over simply admitting an uncomfortable truth. The text suggests that victory in any conflict requires a person to identify and defeat their own moral blindness before ever engaging an external enemy. This is the opening morning of the Bhagavad Gita. When we allow hidden guilt and a fragile ego to rule our minds, we guarantee our own ultimate destruction.